Hello there, welcome back to Rapid Games with Comments. Let's see if we can get to 2300. We are at 2277, so we're going to get some pretty strong opponents. Hopefully some title players. Okay, not yet, but we have an opponent who's 2246, and let's play e4. Not my pet opening, so I don't know. As I keep playing stronger and stronger opponents, I feel a little less confident with e4, but let's try. So, okay, this is the can variation. If black at some point plays knight c6, it's more of a Taimanov. Let's play the main line, which I believe it's still bishop d3, queen c7. Okay, one of the things that this bishop d3 approach enables is to play c4 at some point. If we don't play knight c3, that is the thing. So, well, I'll just castle kingside, and if knight e2, I'm going to play this queen e2 with the idea of already threatening e5, which is kind of annoying for cam players because, yeah, they want to keep the pawn on this end and be flexible for some time so the bishop can go out maybe to a different diagonal, and now he has to play d6, which is not bad, but it's more of a Scheveningen kind of structure where I'm already forcing him to put the pawn on d6. So what do I do here, knight c3 or c4? Well, in this case, I do get the opportunity of playing c4, and I will do that, even though I'm not so sure about the queen on e2. That's a tempo that I probably wouldn't spend on this. If I were to play the Maroczy-Vine in another move order, probably. So b6. Okay, this is what we call a hedgehog structure against the Maroczy-Vine. Normally it's very restricted for black, but the idea for black in the long run is to either break on d5 or b5. For the time it doesn't seem like it's going to be possible just yet. Okay, knight c3. He's gonna castle, I assume. And now there might be sacrificial ideas with knight d5. It's kind of tempting. I don't know if it's too much. It probably is at this point, and then you go knight f5. But for the time being, I would just play to prevent both d5 and b5 for the time being. And I'm really interested in playing an aggressive Maroczy here with f4. I don't know about this diagonal though. You always have to be careful. I don't think queen c5 works yet because I will have knight a4 attacking the queen. But just in case, I think I'm just going to put the king on h1 and take it from there. So there are no tactics on the g1 a7 diagonal. So when my opponent has completed the hedgehog setup, he keeps playing regular moves. This move puts the rook on the semi-open file and leaves b8 for the queen, which makes a lot of sense because the queen doesn't really like the situation on the c file where it can be attacked by my rook at some point. So knight e5, e takes, c takes. I think he still has queen d8. I don't feel like I have enough. I would just keep throwing everything I have at him. And now he really has to do something about this. Normally you try to defend his seats with something like rook f8, and if f5, bishop f8. It's very important for black to hold his pawn on his seat. This is another way. This is probably a good idea. e5 feels like after pawn takes knight fd7, my pawn e5 will just be weak. And his bishop b7 is looking really good. I really want to pull this bishop back. I'm not ready to give up the light square bishop. And for the time being, I have this protected, so I guess it's fine. I have to figure out a way of attacking on the king side. Well, I was saying that f5, normally black after f5 wants to keep the pawn e6 because I have so much control of the d5 square here. If I provoke e5, then knight d5 will come eventually, and he will have a lot of problems dealing with that knight. Not to mention that I get a lot of extra space on the king side to just start throwing everything at him. Of course, the problem with my whole approach is that my center is very extended, and that means it's also very demanding. Defending this huge pawn structure is never an easy task. I don't get rook fda. I mean, it does make sense, but I don't think he gets away with any pawn breaks just yet. I will go rook f3. Not totally convinced about this, but rook h3 and e5 seems like a pretty annoying idea. E5 is never easy because of the weakness on d5 and also knight f5 coming. So even though black has put his pieces in reasonable looking squares, he still has to come up with some active plan. And maybe he had to play d5. I don't know, because the queen is on c7 and he might want to play queen b8 before doing that. But also, he needs to react at some point. I don't know about knight e8. Maybe this is the idea, probably. And it seems like a fairly good idea. It neutralizes my bishop on b2 for sure. So now I feel really compelled to play for an attack here. And the problem is, if he goes bishop f6, I really don't have an answer with that knight on d4. I'll have to put some piece to the defense, which is normal. I could play rook h3, bishop f6, and rook d1 maybe, though I'm not a fan of having the rook on d1, because I don't really know if bishop f6, e5 will work. D takes e, bishop takes h7, king f3, and my fear is that my center might collapse before I can actually win by an attack. I'm really thinking of sacrificing here. It might be too crazy to be okay, but at the same time, it's true that I have a lot of pieces really focused on his king side. So I'm looking at knight e5, pawn takes, and maybe knight f5. Knight f5. The problem is knight takes e4. Knight takes e4 is really annoying because I don't have rook g3 any longer. Yeah, this is a tough choice, and especially because I'm really taking up a lot of time here. I think I would just play it a little slower. It can be dangerous for me to do it like this, but I felt like the other line where I was sacrificing was a bit too much. Okay, he just plays g6, reasonable, but at the same time, I feel like I'm getting some time to get my way. Maybe it's just an illusion. Bishop f6 is coming. I still don't have a definite answer of what to do against that. I mean, he did well with that rook on d8, because if I play e5, he takes and my knight on d4 is hanging. So some of my pieces don't feel like they're so well placed. I'm really thinking now about bringing my knight to the king side with this maneuver, even though it looks rather awkward. And it kind of is, because now e5 could be an annoying answer for me. But maybe I can take and drop back to f3. I don't know. Okay, now I feel like knight f2 has to be it. I mean, I'm going for g4. The position has gone a little bit too maneuvery for my taste. But that's the problem. Maintaining all of this, keeping all of this together is hard. I mean, if I turn a second, then I might drop a pawn in the center. It's very, very hard to handle. Even though it looks imposing and like I'm just going to roll over him. Well, it's not the case. I mean, I always have to be defending e4. Okay, he's patient there. That seems all right. And I really want to play knight g4. I don't know if h5 will win a crucial tempo or if he's just maybe weakening himself too much. I might play knight f3 here, because I'm really interested in taking that bishop and leaving him with some weak dark squares. What I know is that I have to start playing faster though. But knight g5 is an idea. I want to make him weaken himself a little bit, even though g4 will be hard to pull off. Okay, well now, I don't know if this can be right. I mean, all of these moves look really weakening. Now, how do I exploit this? It's a different matter. I'm thinking of knight g4 now. Knight g4, f5. Well, I will have to draw back. I'm not a fan. Okay, if he has played f6, maybe I can get away with going knight e4. Though even though e5, and now I don't have access to f5. Yeah, this can't be great, but it's not so easy to just punish it or something. I'm thinking of bishop c3, but I don't want to interrupt the rook. Yeah, tough one. Tough one, and he's making me use up all my time. I will play knight g4 regardless, because h5 feels like it will be too weakening, honestly. I tend not to trust h5. And well, he has to be careful too. I mean, any pawn breaks, like d5 could leave this king fatally weak. I'm not threatening anything just yet. I was thinking of maybe some maneuver with the queen, which would hit f6 and h5. Okay, he wants to play e5, clearly attacking my knight. I don't know if clearly, but it's something that could happen. What to do now? Rook g3, no, knight h6 check looks reasonable. I don't think he wants to trade that bishop for pretty much any piece. The problem is always this pawn. If the e4 pawn requires constant attention, and I'm still giving it the attention it requires, but it's feeling a little bit too shaky. Now he can definitely play d5. That's something to consider. He should. I think he should do it. See, it takes e5 is my idea. I want to open the long diagonal and cause some trouble. And yeah, queen h4 is also an idea. h7 is already a problem, but I always have to be watching out for e4. I think queen h4 at this point might be a threat. For example, d5. Let's say queen e4. I don't think he... Well, okay. He could take, queen takes. Can I play it right now? Well, if bishop takes, queen takes, I'm threatening checkmate on f8 with the queen. And if queen h4, if he takes on e4, knight f7 looks terrifying. I don't know if I'm checkmating or not, but it does look pretty challenging. I will go for it, even though maybe I'm okay. What is that? That's not it. I mean, I have bishop takes f6 check. I don't know if it's strongest, but I have to play fast, and it looks pretty strong to me. Okay, he will take. I will take back. Bishop h6, bishop g7 has to be played. And I have knight f7. Oh, pretty move. Knight f7. Queen takes d8 check. Oof. 1 minute and 55 seconds. Well, and I stumble upon this tactic. Pretty lucky if you ask me. Rook takes h7. Okay, I'm going too far. Queen takes f8. Queen g8. Queen f6. So unnecessary. Maybe I just go knight g5, but queen takes f4, and I'm not threatening h7. The rook is guarding it. Yikes. Could be easier. So queen takes f4 is the problem. I mean, I've picked up an exchange. Maybe I'm being a little bit too ambitious here. I don't know. Queen h4 should be fine. I'm just trying to find some pretty tactic, but I should stop. I mean, I'm up on exchange. I have knight g5 coming. I mean, I should just stick to the plan. Bishop takes, queen takes. He can take on e4 though. I mean, I'm not super thrilled about that though. Now he has to deal with some stuff on d8. And yeah, I should just go for the check and capture on d6 and forget about my problems. If bishop takes b1, I might throw in a check first. Maybe not, maybe I just take. Yeah, I would just take because I always have this bail out check on e5. Knight f6. Rook occupies the open file. No need to make things complicated now that I'm up on exchange, and I also have a winning position, but well, I only have a minute. I mean, I need to find some targets and simplify this already. Rook d3. I mean, as long as I don't blunder anything like this, but he can't even move the knight at this point. I'm thinking of taking if knight g4. I always can go back with check. Still guarding f2. Maybe I will start pushing the pawn. Knight somewhere. I have rook d7. He doesn't even have a check. And I start trading stuff as I should. Or maybe queen a7. Check on f2. I will just ignore it with king g1. And if rook takes, I'm pinning the queen, and that's it. And if king f8, well, I might as well just exchange everything on e7. Has to be the easiest. So I would like to get something more. Well, what is that about? Queen d4 check, e5. That was weird. He doesn't want to trade queens. Maybe I should, but I don't know. This looks like it will be checkmate soon, hopefully. Maybe I can trap the knight, king f5. I exchange on e7. I play h3, and I'm trapping the knight, I believe. Yep, I'm trapping the knight. Queen h4. I have this check, and if king f6, hopefully. I have queen g5 check, nice. And I get the exchange of the queens, and I'm capturing the knight on g4. Okay, he fell for that. Now I'll make queen and win just in time. Queen h3, yeah, queen h3 check. Okay, he self-mated there. Tough. That was tough. I'm really curious about this game. I just want to test it rather quickly to see what happened. Let's see where I went wrong. There were a lot of mistakes, I assume. Well, the engine was f4, but all of this was reasonable. It doesn't love the plan. It makes sense. You already play b3, c4, and e4. You intend to play f4. Maybe going for a fianchetto is just too grand. And I have to play a little bit more central. Because when the bigger the pawn structure you build up, the tougher it is to maintain it. Even though it's reasonable and I can still defend everything. Well, you saw how many problems I had sticking to the e4 pawn. And here my opponent looks, it looks like he's making reasonable moves, but the knight can be maybe kicked out of e5, of c5, and then these moves become easier with the knight a little bit away from the center. Queen b8 or rook f8 were reasonable. Rook f8 is always in preparation for the opening of the e file and also allows bishop f8. Yeah, knight c5 was a bit weak. Bishop b1, rook fd8. Rook f3, it's reasonable but not loved by the engine. 98, yeah, 98 is strange. And the engine suggests this plan to recycle the bishop through g7. Makes a lot of sense. But where were the blunders? Rook h3 semis. Oh, the engine is suggesting 95. I mean, I'm not going to analyze the game in full, I promise, but 95. Oh, my instincts were right. I just discarded this because of e takes d. And the engine wants e takes d5. I already missed there because I thought it was necessary to play knight f5. What if if my opponent plays bishop f6 here? What's the trick? I don't get it. Oh my god, I completely missed that one. Bishop takes h7. King f8 the engine wants. Why don't just take on h7? Does it get mated after rook h3 and queen h5? Oh, I can just play knight f5, cover the e7 square, and he can do nothing about this. That's insane. For example, knight f5, there's no way to cover against the checkmate on h8. I imagine this line. This will be pretty. Queen h8 regardless. Bishop takes, and rook takes h8 with checkmate. Okay, yeah, that sacrifice is always there, and the reason is this knight e5 is pretty typical, even though you only get a pawn or so, because you have so many active pieces against the king when it happens. It's great. Okay, back to the games as promised. And okay, we have an opponent who's almost 2300 here. D4, knight of seats. We'll play e6. Okay, I'm playing on 2 tabs. That's okay. Okay, we're going to play against the Catalan. But I will throw in this check. So I'm gonna play what we call a Bogo Indian defense. Now there are a lot of approaches to attacking white center. There's c5, there is d5. I will play it with c5. My problem here is that if a3, I'm in the obligation to exchange. And that gives him the pair of bishops and the position is open. But he gets a little bit behind development. I'm already castling basically. So now I'll just take on d4. I think a3 is still the more challenging option. Okay, I'll castle. If a3, I think I might just pull back. Now knight c6 or d5. One of those 2 options. I like the idea of playing with the isolated pawn here. Just because the knight on d2 isn't the most active against it. I mean, the knight on c3 attacks the IQP. Doesn't happen here. So I'll just keep playing normal moves. If knight takes, pawn takes, not even an IQP will appear. I have to be a bit careful. Knight takes, pawn takes, queen a4. I have queen b6 and I defend everything, I think. Now, where does the bishop go back to? I mean, d6 is the most active looking. I just don't want this pawn to come under fire. But for the time being, that doesn't look like it's going to be possible. e7 also makes sense. I mean, the bishop on d6 isn't attacking anything anyway, so I might as well just pull back to e7. Pawn takes, I'm still intending to play with the isolated pawn here. His knights have made a lot of strange maneuvers, to be honest. Doesn't mean he is in a tough situation or anything. I mean, he could play b3 and bishop b2 here. I'm sure he's fine. He's just not putting any pressure on me. And that's pleasant when you're playing with the black pieces. If you think about it, I'm also just a couple of moves away from just completing my development. And I have to be happy with that. I don't know if it's definitely not like the most, let's say, ambitious option. And now I have to take with the knight, because if I had taken with the pawn, the IQP with this pawn on b6 and this knight more or less hanging on b6 doesn't make much sense. Here I can play bishop f6, neutralize this bishop. I'm not giving him any look on my d5 pawn, there's none. And the position is basically symmetrical, so it has to be more or less equal. Especially since I don't have such a hard time neutralizing the bishop on b2. And my hope is that I might be able to fight for this square, because c3 is weak. He doesn't allow me to do so. But at the same time, e4 is weakening. I mean, I'm happy with my pawn structure in the sense that he can't really he can't now he's just blocking his bishop. Some weak squares appear. I have to be a bit careful though. I mean, as I was speaking, sorry, I kind of got a bit lost there, but it's because I'm noticing a tactic. Knight d before, knight takes b4, knight takes b4. Looks great for me. I might be entering d3 and everything, but after knight takes, queen g4 is what bothers me. It bothers me a lot. And the reason is, if I play f6 to stop the checkmate on g7, because that's what he threatens, I'm dropping the pawn on e6 and it's with check. And if I don't have that, let's see, knight b4, knight takes, queen g4. If I play bishop f6, he has e5, which is terrifying because my bishop is hanging on b7. And if I were to take on g2, he will take on f6 first, threaten checkmate, and my bishop is still hanging. So I have some problems there. I have to be extremely careful with that line. Queen g4 is it's really a problem if I go knight d4, which was my original intention, really. Now, if I play bishop f6, he takes d and he attacks my knight, so that's not good either. I mean, either I have to pull back here or to f6, which honestly feels all right. It's not what I wanted to see, but at the same time, I think I have compensation for my slightly more passive setup now, because yeah, e4 is weakening. No one takes care of d4 any longer. Well, aside from pieces, of course, but my pawn structure is a little bit more compact. There are some squares I don't have to worry about, and he has some loose squares within his position. And the bishop has been hurt by that e4 too. So okay, I just have to figure out what to do with my queen, because the rooks are coming to the center, and the queen is not going to feel comfortable with that. So I'll still love to neutralize this bishop. It was just tactically not working for me, unfortunately. So I'm thinking of something like queen c7, and if rook a c1, rook a c8, and then I will hide on b8, a maneuver that's already familiar to us because we've seen it in the last game. That black should probably done something like that just to get out of the of the edge race. And it's never good to leave a queen and facing an opponent's rook on the same file. So I'm gonna hide this queen on b8 when I get an opportunity to do it. Maybe I do it now. Maybe I play rook fd8 first, because I don't see any way in which he can exploit this yet. I'm not gonna stay there forever, that's for sure. e5 looks kind of scary, but at the same time, the same thing we said about the last game. If he starts pushing pawns, he has to defend them after. I mean, as long as I keep getting decent squares for my pieces, I might be able to get away with it, and then he will have to prove that he can defend those pawns. And as far as I see, he's not killing me with an attack, not immediately. So pushing pawns always creates some risks for the side doing it. I mean, if he plays f4, for example, I don't think he's getting that much from that advance, and he's weakening more lines, more squares are a little bit softer. The e4 pawn has less possibilities of being defended, or he'll have to push it to have it defended. And all those pawn pushes keep creating more and more weaknesses in your camp, even if it's not so obvious. And in the long run, it is a problem. So I can encourage him to push pawns for now, provided he's not just destroying me, of course. For the time being, seems fine. Of course, white is all right, but I also feel like I really have no problems in this position. And well, he's taking his time too, so I have to wonder what he's thinking now. I guess he's trying to evaluate e5. He has to be contemplating something. It's true also that it's not so easy to come up with an active plan for any of the two sides. I'm thinking maybe knight e3 would make sense. And I'll continue with queen b8 because I would really love to play knight d4 or knight e5. Then there's also knight c4. We're probably going to release the tension on the d5 with some exchanges. And I think the outcome is more or less the same. It's kind of equal. But no one should overdo it too much, especially him, I think. h3 is a move that would make sense, so he saves the trouble of any knight g4s in the future. That might look weakening, but provided this pawn structure, white would probably just be better off doing something like that. Okay, a3, he's slowly trying to expand, I would assume. It's an idea. I will go back to b8 because I don't want to stay there forever, as I said. Well, b4, again, I'm not sure if he's gaining something from this or if he's just weakening himself. It's honestly kind of hard to tell. I think at the very least I have knight e5 coming anyway, and the knight has some prospects there. I would really like to play knight e5. I mean, I'll only have to check if there's nothing with my bishop hanging afterwards, but if it's changed, I can always go back to b8 and protect it. So I'll go knight e5. I'm threatening to enter d3, and that's not a small thing. If he plays knight b3, I might exchange on d1 and put the knight on c4, which is also vulnerable. I mean, as long as he keeps pushing pawns, squares are going to appear for my knights. So I feel pretty good about this one on e5. Okay, that was good because he's keeping control of both these squares, and he's intending clearly to go f4 and just kick me out of there. Okay, is there something I can do about this? I'm thinking of trading one pair of rooks. Has to be done, it feels like. And after rook takes e1, then what? Queen d6 maybe, attacking the knight on d2. He can still leave it there, I guess, because my knight is also hanging. If queen d6, there might be f4. Well, then queen takes d2, queen takes, rook takes, and his bishop also comes under an attack. He could take here. Hard to tell what's going on. I think I might be winning this pawn, but I have to be careful with the rook coming. Yeah, not so simple, honestly. I'm thinking of the exchange sacrifices. It's too soon. I would like to get this pawn, but it's probably too soon. I have problems on the back rank and everything. So what now? Queen d6 is the move to keep the initiative going, but f4 is honestly somewhat terrifying. If I had an answer to f4, I would definitely play queen d6 here. I'm just not finding it. What do I play after f4? Knight g6 is a thing, and well, the knight is still there, but the knight on g6 is completely out of the game, which I don't love. Knight f2 g4 is definitely risky, but it has to be considered. e5, queen takes d, queen takes, rook takes, bishop takes b7, and he's not. I mean, he's not really threatening checkmate. Maybe I can get away with something like this. At the same time, it's not like I'm winning or anything. Yeah, really hard to decide on this one because the knight ends up being vulnerable here. I'm looking for more ideas, but I'm having some trouble finding something convincing here. This knight is vulnerable, and if I could make it move, that would be great. But even though after this queen f6, what if knight b3? I mean, it still feels like the onus is on me because f4 is coming, and f4 is becoming more and more annoying. I don't love the knight on g6. That's why I'm so reluctant to play it. I mean, it's just completely out of play there. I'm thinking of knight c6 to go to d4. That could be it. e5, I still believe I believe I still have knight d5. Tough choice. Maybe I will do this. e5, I have knight e5, and if he starts with bishop takes, e5, I have knight takes e5, and the bishop protects the knight, so my queen can stay there. Tough. Very, very tough game. This 91 was really good. I mean, he really covered some of his most vulnerable squares. Okay, knight b3. Good thing is that I have that knight kind of covered. I'm thinking of this to play bishop f6. I would really love to force that to happen. Let's try at least. I really want to play bishop f6, neutralize that bishop, and just leave me with this good bishop versus this one that's not looking great anymore. e4 is a move that really hurt him. It gave him some space, but at the same time, some weaknesses appear and his bishop is not all that happy. So now I'm pretty happy that I can actually do this. Bishop takes, knight takes, and if e5, I will have knight e5, I think. Yes, I will. He can play it though. The thing is e5, and I get d5 automatically for my knight. And also f5 is a little bit more vulnerable. I could just start maneuvering. Every time you push a pawn, weaknesses appear. And that's That's the rule. Some exchanges would do me a good service. Because the less pieces there are, the easier it is to focus on the pawn weakness. And this is a lazy move, I know, but I'm a little bit down on the clock, so I'd better start. I better start making reasonable moves that don't blunder anything. I mean, once you're down to 2 minutes, you can't ask for a lot more, I believe. Now 95. In these 2 squares again, I'm gonna insist. I mean, at some point I have to get the knight there. It has to happen. 95 would be ideal. Maybe I should have done it right away because rook d1, I exchange, and e4 is kind of hanging at that point. It's a tough choice for white because the second he pushes the pawn, his king feels a little bit more awkward. And it makes things more complicated for him. Maybe he has to do this to stop the knight coming to e5, but yeah, not the easiest move. Not the easiest move to play. Feels like overextending a little bit. Okay, well that I guess just allows the knight to come to e5. Of course, I have to think about this. Knight e3, rook d1, and then what? Bishop a6 Bishop e6 feels awkward, honestly. I'm really thinking of changing to this plan now. I will do it. I think it's reasonable. I want to play h4, take, and weaken his pawn structure even more. If he plays h4, I think I will have g4 for the knight, so knight e5 becomes easier to play. If you play h4, you definitely have a problem playing f4 with that g4 square being so weak. So I wouldn't mind him pushing h4. This is pretty typical in Sicilian positions, really. This happens a lot. You start probing the king side for weaknesses a little bit. This wasn't a Sicilian, but this h5, h4, even h3 happens. Yeah, I will go h4. Maybe get a hold of the dark squares a little bit if he plays g4. Good, I like what I see there. Queen f4, e5, 95. I always have 95, so I will play it. Maybe 95 would have been better because knight g6, and I'm definitely putting a knight on f4, which is way better than what I did, honestly. Though I have to say that this queen here is kind of terrifying for him. Ooh, that's barely defended, but I can't take advantage of it, I think, unfortunately. Well, 95 still looks strong. I'm just threatening to capture on e4, and I have a full control of the dark squares now, finally. Rook c3, okay. Keeping everything together, except that the pawn on e4 is falling, I guess, and... what is he thinking about here? Rook e3, I will play f5, and I think I'm keeping the piece, I think. Yep, looks like it. Bishop takes. Rook e3. I'll play f5 and just keep the bishop there. I don't think he can play f3. There will be checks on g3, so I don't think that's happening. He has to play something like rook e3. Well, he's really down on time now. And yeah, he has a lot of things to cover. I don't think this is easy. Will he play rook e3? Yeah, he kind of had to. What now? I mean, I would like to see something like this happen. If queen takes f2, but my problem is if I play rook e1, bishop takes e4 is the problem. I don't know if I have something there. Maybe there is. Bishop takes, rook takes e4, knight f3 check. That's beautiful. Queen takes, rook takes e1, and this is hanging. Wait a second, is that even a possibility? He's so low on time that I think I'm winning anyway, but no, I'm missing something. Rook takes, rook d1, rook takes, bishop takes, and queen takes d1. Now what? Maybe I'll just play f5. Why get into all of those incredible problems? Now I have knight g3, and I think I bail out with an attack against the queen, so he can't really take the knight. Now knight c4, I believe, should be fine. Rook d1 is even better. Rook d1, and he's pinned all over the place. Okay. Whoa, tough game, but I pretty nice in the sense that I think it was a good positional game. He really gave me control of all the dark squares. This maneuver with h5, h4, I think was pretty instructive. I mean, I'm really fighting for e5 and f4 here. I don't have a problem with him pushing pawns further because I'm kind of provoking that. I was doing that throughout the game to attack those pawns later. And it's because my pieces have good squares to fall back to. But here h5 is just an idea to weaken his pawn structure a little bit more. Imagine I play h4 and I manage to exchange here. Then this pawn e4 will be isolated. He'll have no f pawn to play f4 any longer, so I would just stamp a knight onto e5 and he could do nothing about it. I mean, I would own the e5 square. So h5, even though it doesn't look like it's the case, it's really fighting for e5 indirectly. And the idea is h4. Of course, if he plays g4 as he did in the game, I get both f4 and e5 for my pieces. And then he's basically paralyzed with all his pawns on light squares as it happened in the game, and this bishop being terrible. So yeah, I think this maneuver is pretty instructive. As he played it, well, I'm just getting a free hand on the dark squares. Maybe in retrospect, knight e5 is even better. f4, knight g6, and he has a hard time defending f4. But if not, knight f4, and I just put a knight on f4, queen on e5. But I mean, queen f4 should also be fine, I think, because I'm getting a piece here anyway. And e5 at this point feels rather weakening. I have a lot of pieces now in excellent positions. His pawn is definitely parted from the rest of his position, so very hard to keep it together there. Okay, one more. Well, I had a connection issue apparently. My opponent too, but somehow we managed to continue the game, so be it. It's working for me. Okay, that's strange. I mean, every time I refresh, I get his move. Oh. Really? We're getting... No, this time I'm playing d5. Let's play a proper Catalan for once. I will just play the classical variation. Let's play bishop e7, castle, and if he allows me to, just take on c4. So let's see if I can remember something about this. This is the open Catalan, where you just take a pawn. Some lines you try to hold on to it. But the main idea for black is to play c5 at some point and break loose on the queen side, which is really hard with this bishop. Basically, just policing the queen side. It's extremely challenging. I will play the main line here, which goes a6. Then the idea is that if queen takes, I can accelerate my development via b5 and bishop b7, neutralizing the bishop on g2. Now, what's the problem with this approach? After I play b5, the queen goes back, bishop b7. My pawn is backwards. I have backward pawn on a semi-open file that can be pretty easy to attack. I have some positional risk. The c5 square, if I don't get to play c5, will be in white's hands. This, at the moment, is a weak square for me. Now, a4 is a little bit strange, but I'm not saying it's terrible, but I kind of don't get it. I mean, he's not winning a pawn or anything close to it. And I think I can play knight c6 here, attacking d4, and at the same time getting access to b4. Now that he can never push me back. And I feel like I'm doing well here. I mean, I'm fully mobilized. If I get something knight b4 followed by c5 or something like that, I can't even get the initiative. A takes, rook takes. I don't know, maybe I will take with the queen and have this battery here. Something like knight takes d4 is now a threat, actually. Knight takes d4, bishop takes d2. He wouldn't love that it's changed. And if I get his light square bishop, he won't be that happy. Okay, that makes sense. Now I'm just wondering if I can sack a pawn. Knight b4, queen takes c7, knight f2 d5. That queen actually looks close to being trapped. Queen d7, bishop c6. I'm trapping that queen if he takes the pawn on c7. It's not going back. I mean, queen takes, knight f2 d5. Where does it go back to? All of these squares are completely covered. When black gets full activity and white is still behind development, he doesn't seem to be contained in c5, you know you're getting a good result out of the opening with black. It's normally way harder than this because white really puts pressure on this poor pawn on c7 and doesn't allow you to play c5. c5, for example, here looks entirely correct, but the queen is suffering so much that I might be trying to get something more. Let's say bishop d5. Where does the queen go? It only has two squares, e3 and c3. None of them really good looking. I will play maybe bishop d5. c5 is tempting though. I mean, it just I just solved all of my development issues, but well, I will go bishop d5 just because it feels like I can keep the initiative by attacking the queen somewhat. Okay, now what? Knight g4, queen f4 is what worries me. I would even be happy with f5. Then bishop d6 is coming. Even though I weaken e5 a little bit, I don't think I care because he's never putting something here with the pressure I have on this diagonal. c5, I'm sure c5 is very principled. D takes c, rook c8, and I will get my pawn back with with a huge attack, really. I mean, I have my eyes on f2 already. Might just do that. I mean, the only thing I'm not convinced about is the knight coming to b3 at c3, sorry, attacking my my bishop. Then bishop b3, well, that leaves me facing the bishop. So yeah, I kind of have to address knight c3. That's mildly annoying. I'm even thinking about this weird looking move. I know it's definitely not principled, but at the same time it allows my bishop to stay here and I'm not facing knight c3, attacking the bishop, attacking the pawn. I will play it, even though it looks so weird. One thing is that I might get to exchange this bishop at the right moment, and if I get an open position with the pair of bishops, I'm happy. And here, well, I just take his knight and I keep the pride of my position on the d5 square, and I keep control of both d5 and e4. So I'm playing for squares here again. I'm playing for the light squares in this game. Okay, that gives me the opportunity to play c5, and I think the reason is if d takes c, I have knight e4 attacking the queen, then I get my pawn back defended by the knight on e4, and I'm even attacking f2. So this looks pretty convincing to me. Where does the queen go? Maybe c2, bishop takes c5. You have to play some sad move like e3, which weakens his position even more. But what if not? What if he doesn't do that? I mean, bishop takes, attacks this pawn, rook f1 is really undesirable. Yeah, the initiative looks kind of overwhelming, but we'll have to see. Now what? Queen b4, bishop then. Yeah, it has to go queen c2. It's the most reasonable square maybe, so that the queen is not under so much pressure. But I mean, that's not so true. I mean, rook c8 is coming, and then there will be some other threats with these core attacks. e3. I wonder if there are no tactics already. Okay, well, I wasn't expecting that, honestly. You're a bit over optimistic, I think. Rook c8. This is defended enough times, and now I'm threatening things on this diagonal. Oh no, e5 is even an idea at this point. because f2 is falling apart. He doesn't get the time to play e3 because I take with a discovered attack here. Okay, that's reasonable. That was absolutely necessary, even though I'm sure he's not happy with that. I'm trying to see what happens if bishop takes d4, but bishop takes d5 honestly looks kind of confusing. Because I can't take with the queen, the rook will be hanging. It's worth investigating. Bishop takes. And then what? Bishop takes f2. Nah, doesn't really help. King takes f2. Queen a7 check has bishop e3. Attacks the queen. So I can't just take his. Yeah, I'll have to take here. I mean, I'm not sad about this. I'm just looking for something stronger if there is. Oh, but this seems pretty compelling. At first I thought he could go to b3, but now I just take and the bishop on c1 is hanging. So he can't take, I just take on c1. So he really has to go to d2. Which doesn't look so great. I will just play rook d8, pinning the knight with the queen in front, and I'm also threatening e5. Is he losing a piece there? It really looks like he's losing a piece there. It's very, very hard to defend the knight on d4. Honestly, I hadn't calculated this, but it does make sense. I mean, when you have so much activity and your opponent is kind of tied down like this, has to be some... I mean, tactics have to favor you. And even e5 is kind of tempting. Just a sample line. e5... Knight takes b5, bishop h1, and I don't think he can defend the checkmate on g2 because he can't play f3. The pawn will be pinned. That's interesting. I don't want to play it right away because if I go bishop h1 right now, my problem is that he will play f3 and my bishop will be hanging. But if I started with e5 first, then wherever the knight goes to, a knight takes b5, knight b3, doesn't really matter. I have bishop h1, it's a forced checkmate. No, it's not. No, it's not. Well, it kind of is. I would just, if he plays e4, I would just take the pawn. I'm still threatening checkmate. And this is not checkmate. I can take and I still have the bishop to go back to f8. So that's a cool finish if I can pull it off. I'm just looking now at e5. Knight f3 might be his only option. That's really crazy. But I think it's the case. e5, knight f3. I'm winning a pawn there at least. I mean, I take on f3. I take queen takes f3, and it's a big pawn. I mean, it gives d4 to my bishop. I'll be threatening this tactic immediately. Bishop takes, queen takes, and the rook is hanging. So it looks good. Yeah, I want to play e5, knight f3, bishop takes, e takes, queen takes. That's an extra pawn. And again, this doesn't really work. I just take, and then I always have bishop to f8. Honestly, I don't know if it's the strongest because there's also rook e8 that might... Yeah, that might be it. I mean, rook e8, and how does he defend? e3 falls to the very same stuff with bishop h1, or even e5 because of the pin. Yeah, I mean, you shouldn't try to be too subtle when you have a really easy win. That's not really a good idea, and that's what I'm trying to do. So yeah, don't do this at home. But well, it's worth checking if I'm not missing any resources by white. I mean, that match is true. I think rook d8, there might be queen c3 attacking the bishop c5. At this point, I don't know if I'm trying to sell the idea of e5 right now to myself, trying to discard rook d8, but it really looks like if rook d8, queen c3 is mildly annoying at least. I don't think so. There is queen d5. So yeah, I feel compelled to play the very direct rook d8 because in the other case I just win a pawn if white plays it right, and I think here I might be crashing. I mean, queen d5, the rook's hanging, I'm just threatening to take, and I'm also threatening e5. I don't think he's saving that piece. So yeah, you have to be objective and just go for what you truly believe is the strongest line. I was trying to convince myself the other thing was better, but I mean, this looks pretty convincing to me. And I'm just winning a knight. I will have this in any case. So yeah, it has to be it. Okay, that is interesting, because if I take, he takes with the queen, and I'm not convinced about this. Not in the least. So what now? Bishop b6 maybe? I can even drop back to b8, honestly. Which should probably be a good idea, so I don't have to deal with any nasty tricks on the last rank. I can just forget about all those tricks. His problem is the same. This. So there might be one thing I'm not factoring in, and it's the fact that if I just take, he takes, and what do I do with this? Well, I have queen a8. I have queen a8, and I'm covering this. I don't know if he can use this to get away from the threats, but I'm also threatening stuff like bishop h1. I don't think he can. No, he has to be losing something here. Pretty sure. Queen c7, okay, a counterattack. If pawn takes, rook takes. Well, that's how he's trying to use his leverage there. Because if I take, rook takes, and my rook on d8 seems to be in a lot of trouble. Well, it is, to be fair. It really looks like it is in a lot of trouble. I'm seeing quite a pretty line here, but I don't think it works. So I will probably just play bishop h1 and get it over with. Just play the most obvious move. I think it has to be strong enough. I mean, if f3, I take on f3. The second he takes, I take on d1 with check. So again, I'm spending a lot of time to try to close this game, but I think it's worth it, because if I get these moves right, he's just completely losing. For example, here, rook d2, e takes d4, rook takes d4. I have queen a2 threatening checkmate, so he has no time to take on d8. That's one possible outcome. And yeah, the reason is that with this maneuver, bishop h1 now capturing the pawn, his king is more exposed than ever. Might not be the only way. I'm sure it's not, but this looks pretty strong to me. Okay, so he took. Okay, that, I don't know if it drops the knight, but it's kind of close. I can take, queen takes f8. Do I want that? Probably not. I will just keep checking, sending him farther and farther into my position. h5, check. I want to take this with check. That would be the end of it. Now he has to go king h4. But if that's the case, queen takes and threatening check. Okay, he resigned. Okay, good. We got to 2300 finally. And I think, well, the games were interesting today. A lot of strategically interesting ideas, which have to do with weak squares, how to provoke your opponent into pushing pawns, to get good squares for your pieces, to get outposts for your knights, to exploit the weakness of color in your opponent's position. You see that as the games get tougher, you have to resort to more than just tactics to win. And I think it's going to get increasingly interesting as we move forwards. Thanks a lot for watching. I will wait for you in our next video on the speedrun. Thanks a lot, and please remember to subscribe and hit the like button. See you next time. Bye bye.